Are you ready to increase your retention and revenue and convert website traffic to clients? Then you're ready for Maya. Maya is a marketing and client recruitment software. Maya creates better business relationships by pairing the right clients with the right beauty professionals. How do we do it? A matchmaker. Your brand will have its own unique matchmaking survey. By pairing people based on their skill set, budget, personality, and lifestyle preferences, Maya creates lasting relationships that keep both sides coming back for more. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Pair the right clients with the right beauty pros the first time. Visit joinmaya.com to get started.
Thank you for joining me. This is Katie Whitledge with the Beyond the Technique podcast. Today, we're talking about the financial do's and don'ts of seven-figure salons. So whether you're doing $1 million in revenue or that's part of your trajectory, today we have the financial wellness guru for the beauty industry here. We have returning guest Tom Kuhn. You may know Tom already. He is the founder and CEO of QNITY Inc. and all of its related companies. He is the leading expert on profitability through better financial management. Raise your hand if you're like, I needed this episode. I think we all need this episode. He is a highly regarded speaker, author, educator, and advisor to many salon industry market leaders. Okay, well, if you've not heard about QNITY, they've helped in the last 35 years thousands of salons and other creative professionals to help them earn more money doing what they love and actually have a life. He is relentless in his commitment to bringing greater prosperity to salon and other creative professionals. And this has resulted in breakthroughs in performance for leaders and service providers alike. I have links in our show notes to episode 303, where Tom was here joining me on, again, a financial topic, because he is the one who really understands the creative brains of the people in this industry and helps simplify and make it accessible for you to have systems financially to be successful. So without further ado, help me welcome Tom Kuhn. Welcome back to Beyond the Technique.
Thanks, Katie, and congratulations on the great work that you're doing. Wow, that number of episodes. I have my own podcast. I think we're at about 165, and you're at how many episodes did you say?
Well, today is episode 558.
Yeah, well, congratulations and shout out to you and your team. I know it's a lot of work and a lot of commitment, so thank you. I'm glad to be your guest again.
Thank you, Tom. Well, I'm glad to have you back because we tend to surround ourselves with very high performing, high functioning salon owners and teams. And yet, a lot of people are going through challenges financially. What have you been noticing in the community that you've built?
Yeah, it's a timely episode because we get involved in a lot of different projects and topics at QNITY, and the subject of financial success for a seven-figure salon is always what we've worked on. I mean, it goes back to the very beginning for me in the industry, but it's especially timely because just last week we just did a live profit workshop. And I do it in collaboration with Candace Galeotto. I think you know Candace. She's an outstanding educator. She walks the talk. She's got great profitability. She's got 2 locations. She's kind of been there, done it, and is a great gift. So her and I had a chance to collaborate, and we had a live audience. And we ask everybody at the beginning sort of to be a level set. And this is probably true with a lot of your guests. I mean, what's on your mind? And in certain cases, it's just greater financial confidence, having a better understanding of who can help them and how to get the most out of your accountant, bookkeeper, referral for accountant, bookkeeper, tax person. A lot were really admitting that it's just the side of the business that they have the least confidence in. So I like to meet people where they're at. And if you're talking about a seven-figure salon, you're at a point where there's enough revenue that there's a lot of strategies that you can start to employ that are worthwhile for you. Under $1 million, I think the primary focus has to be getting up over $1 million. I mean, that threshold, if you're operating a business with a $500,000, $750,000 revenue or 600,000, it's a shout out to those businesses. And it's not easy to be an entrepreneur, but at that volume, you're so susceptible to like one person or two-person leaving, and which has a big difference on sales and profitability. So really having a very high focus on revenue. Everybody should always be focused on revenue, but especially under seven-figure salon. For seven-figure salons and more, it's there's a lot of things that we can talk about with that, and I'll highlight a few of them today. But the first thing I want to do is just kind of acknowledge your audience and say you're already doing something right, you know.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that salons under seven figures, it has this sense of feeling like I'm living paycheck to paycheck.
yeah.
I find interesting is our seven figure owners have a little bit of that fear still in them. So I think you're right where it's tied to confidence. And I think one of the struggles, and I know you're very motivated in solving this, is nobody is teaching financial acumen or even like financial strategy. So you have this current project underway that's trying to help solve this, systematize like how do we know what percentage should be what in our spend? But tell me a bit about what QNITY is doing to help solve this.
Yeah, so QNITY has always done studies and done data and done projects. Most of it very under the radar, more for our clients. I mean, we probably have done, I think we checked a couple weeks ago, maybe altogether over 200 different like surveys and mini studies. But we've also done some substantial large scale studies. We have one going on right now, and it is a full P&L benchmark study. Now, in my mind, it's an objective study. It has sponsors from multiple brands. Well as a sponsor, Aveda is a sponsor, Zenoti, Boulevard, the 2 to 10 Project, PBA is advocating for it. Many other companies are advocating for it too. So we are right now in the thick of a P&L study, and there's no charge to participate. And if you do participate, you do two things. Number one is you allow us to actually level up the industry by having a more objective way to look at what the spending and revenue benchmarks are, especially spending. Revenue many times can come from POS companies. I know certain POS companies have put out numbers from revenue, but what's missing is everything below revenue, and that's where a formal study is really needed. So um, and first of all, the studies that I have seen on profitability are all pre-pandemic.
Mm.
And that alone, there's been enough changes into the model that alone is worthy of its own study to see, what are the benchmarks for front desk, for back bar, for laundry, for merchant fees, for supplies, so on and so forth. And but even prior to pandemic, the numbers were suspect. And so it's a fully organized study with multiple sponsors. We also are working directly with a CPA firm that has experience in doing benchmark studies before. They've done it in the school industry for years. So when we were really looking at a firm to align with, we looked at a firm that already has experience in the beauty and wellness space. They have a salon clientele. And they've also done independent studies before, and that firm is Lightheart Sanders. We're also working with the University of Texas, one of their top analysts, to add meat to the bone. So this is a very, very talented research team. It is a lot of advocacy with big beauty and tech brands. And I think that everybody and anybody should participate in this. It's super simple. It's a quick survey, and then you upload a spreadsheet directly to the independent CPA firm. You become part of the data pool, and then when it's done, you'll get a scorecard, and you also get the findings, and the industry, finally has an updated set of benchmarks.
I'm sitting here like, who wouldn't want to participate in this? This is so awesome that you are taking the time and energy to all the things that you've done behind the scenes to bring companies together to help put this study in place. Thank you for that. I am going to put in our show notes for everybody listening or watching. If you're watching on our YouTube channel today, go to the link or go to our show notes and get in on this study. Like Tom said, you simply fill out a survey and then you upload some P&L information, but it's super secure. It goes right to the CPA, not to anybody else. So I love that you just mentioned that you get a scorecard, because I'm sitting here like, well, not only are we going to see the whole industry and what's been submitted, but how do we stack up against what's happening? So very, very cool that you're doing that, Tom.
It'll continue after that. So we'll do the study and then we're going to, on a more ongoing basis, do this so the numbers don't get stale. So, and I really thought about your audience, Katie, and just everybody likes to have some tangible things, so can I go through some tangible ideas that
I
really
would love to
relate
hear that. Absolutely. What are the tangibles for us?
So what I we have our core program that really has a variety of different strategies, techniques, and systems. It's a very buttoned down system. And what I like to highlight is things that just is real current for me, maybe what I'm noticing and leaning into more these days, because this course has been taught and updated probably 20 times. And it's always, we always update our courses. They do not get stale. And so every time we do it, so I'm going to go through some of the things that are more recent and top of mind for me, and there's a handful. Number one is, of course, technology. And, the field of accounting and bookkeeping and tracking and all of that is under a big revolution. There's a lot of new tools that will make the whole financial management function, run smoother, more accurate, whatever. And one of the things right off the top of the bat with technology, there's a lot of new technology platforms, but I have an interesting insight for your audience and actually for the industry, as it relates to technology.
Okay, give
So,
it to us.
so I'm a big fan of technology and I'm even a bigger fan of technology adoption. How many of us have a subscribed technology service where we use like 3% of it? And now I also have an insight on what is I could argue, the most used technology platform, regardless of financial. What do you think would be the most common, highest percentage of companies use this technology platform?
Okay,
It
so my mind goes marketing, so I'd say Meta, but if is it the point of sale?
Not Point of sale is pretty diverse in terms of there's a lot of great POS companies. It's QuickBooks.
Okay.
Um, and I think you gave a great example from marketing, because that would sort of be just like in marketing where it's Meta, that's the dominant. QuickBooks. I mean, I find about 95% of businesses in the beauty industry use QuickBooks, more and more QuickBooks online. So
Yep.
one of the things that we're doing is we're infusing more QuickBooks related strategies. And a lot of people way underutilize the reporting function within QuickBooks. Many are starting to budget from scratch when you actually can use QuickBooks to sort of download a budget template and then you can fill it in. The other thing with QuickBooks is using the efficiency of integration with POS systems. So the cost of labor in accounting is something that we need to watch.
Yep.
Also with technology, other things that really come to mind for me is some other technology platforms that are even like benefits related, like Gusto, Ally Health, Betterment. These are really, I think, great new app-driven solutions. And we use all three of those at QNITY. And we actually have partnerships with Betterment and Ally Health, because in terms of vetted related benefits for the teams and payroll. So Gusto is a great payroll processing, by the way. Betterment's 401k and Ally Health is telemedicine and mental health. Um, so, and I think before we leave the subject of technology, really a way to approach it is to assess the platforms you already have that are financial related. Number two is figure out how they can connect with each other, and then maximize adoption. So if do you keep it or not? And then you maximize adoption. So those are some technology notes for you.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the adoption part is key. But then this is something that always stood out to me about QNITY coaching in general. Being a part of your community, you really help people not just understand or have the awareness about what to do, but you help them execute, which once executed, how do you keep it going? It doesn't fall off the radar. So I agree that a major do for financial success and sustainability is adopting technology and then having something in place that helps you stay consistent with those practices.
Right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another practice that I've seen, sometimes we've been involved with a company, sometimes very large companies too, or companies that would be 8 figures, okay? And I have one right in my mind right now that I'm going to give you an example of. And this is an 8-figure company that has the same issues that $1 million salon does, and that's the financial management. Maybe it wasn't a priority. Maybe you really didn't have the right financial team in place, but there's a very, very simple practice that's almost a keystone practice. I mean, if you do this thing, it's a domino effect of positive change. And it's so simple and so obvious. And that is having a weekly finance meeting, update, concentrated, pre-scheduled focus time in the finance function.
I'm like writing this down because we're all like, whoa, weekly. Yes, we all need a weekly financial meeting.
Same day, same time, like clockwork. And this company I have in mind is they never had any, they barely even had a monthly meeting, they barely even had a quarterly meeting. So I challenged them to do it like for a week, then 2 weeks, then 3 weeks. And I said, okay, got a streak going. How many weeks? Then we got up to like 8 weeks. And then a year later, they were like, okay, we got to 52 weeks. And now I think they're at maybe 150 straight weeks. And their whole financial, I rated them about a 3 out of 10 in terms of financial management practices. Now I rate them about a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Candice Gliotto, who co-teaches the Profit course with me, I think that her and Ashley from her team, it's a ridiculous number. I mean, it's hundreds of consecutive weeks. So it's such a simple practice, and it's just the discipline and the consistency about carving out that time to address financial matters. When I was running a large multi-location salon company, finance wasn't the only function I had. I had marketing, I had human capital, operations, and education. And so for me too, even though I really came from a finance side, it was like Thursday at noon and everything built up to, so I knew when I sat down at Thursday at noon, all the information was ready. I could make quick decisions on spending decisions, staffing decisions. So weekly meeting, weekend, we call it week in, week out. It's a week in, week out practice. So.
Okay, so I'm imagining that I'm in this meeting. Who should be present, and what are some of the KPIs you're looking at?
Well, that's a great question. In terms of KPI, I think, we have a zoomed out and zoomed in. Zoom out, I think every single day has to be sales and then breaking sales down between client count and average ticket and service and retail. On a weekly basis, in terms of the KPI to look at, there's several different calculators that we create, things that help with spending decisions. Like we have a spending calculator, we have a savings calculator, we have, a front desk calculator. So it's really to do a reset every week. And who should be in the meetings leads me over to a couple other practices. We have something that we encourage. It's called named every number. So that if you look at a profit and loss statement, there's a name next to every single line item on the P&L for who has primary and secondary accountability. Now, if you're $1 million salon and there's you and a manager or you and a bookkeeper, whatever, chances are a lot of those names are going to be you. But the larger the organization and the bigger the leadership team, you're able to start spreading out some of the financial management. So week in, week out, really important practice. The other one is named every number. And then let me also get with you on some of the other practices that are so important. I want to stay with roles for a moment. So if you're someone that really doesn't have experience in the different types of finance roles, it's very easy to get lost or to align with a non-expert or whatever. But to really understand that there's sort of a hierarchy of skills, within the finance function. You sort of got your clerk who has very little training but can input numbers. Then you move up to like a bookkeeper. Then you move up to like an accountant. Then you move up to a controller, and then you move up to like a CFO. All right. So this is sort of and it's just like someone that's very seasoned in a salon that just with a little bit of observation and inquiry, you can say what level someone's at. Oh, I can tell right there that is a, out of 5 levels, that's a 5-level colorist. We can do the same thing in the finance function and say, okay, this is your staff. What you really have there is you really don't have a controller, you have an accountant, or you don't have a clerk, you got someone that's better than that. They can be a bookkeeper. The other thing that's really important for people to understand, and this is direct experience. So I was a CPA for 13 years.
Oh,
and worked, so it was probably 26,000 hours of service working as an independent accountant, primarily working with creative businesses. Well, then I left public accounting and went in-house into a company in the beauty industry, and I became a CFO. I just assumed that because I was a CPA, that I would know what I was doing as a CFO. It was almost like learning another job. And so what I've learned is I have total respect for the CPAs. I have total respect for the CFOs, but they are very different roles. And just because you're a great CPA, just because I felt I was a really good CPA, does not necessarily mean you understand the CFO function. So,
and for everybody listening, I would separate the main, and you can tell me if this is off, but a CFO really has that strategic mindset, whereas a CPA has a very good understanding of tax management and optimization. And so what would you say is kind of the difference for people listening between a CFO and a CPA?
I think you hit a key area right there is tax. Your CFO is not going to handle tax. You definitely want to have your tax with usually a CPA firm. I think that a CFO, just by default, is going to have a little bit more of an operational understanding. They're going to get into the practicality of inventory versus inventory that just shows up, on your financials. So cash management. Also, a CFO needs to be able to be there to help integrate amongst the different functions, So it's rare for a CPA to really be able to put that CFO hat on. Just like a CFO, you're not going to expect them to have the latest trends in tax, so.
I appreciate you bringing this up because I think a lot of salon owners work with pretty competent CPAs, but all deep down in their hearts wish they had a CFO who could tell them the strategic ways to run their numbers, their business from a numbers perspective. For most owners listening, I would say 99.9% of them, they don't have a CFO. What do you recommend? Is this an alliance with, hey, QNITY helps work with you to have this type of mindset? How do we fill that gap?
Yeah. And the vast majority of organizations that that we're working with in the beauty industry, the CFO often is the owner, and the reluctant CFO. So I think the beauty of the system we teach is that we make it simple for the owners and their managers and their bookkeepers so that you don't need a CFO, but instead as you have these strong practices that are in place and use outside companies for education and training, for example, QNITY, and then, hire advisors when you need them, so that it's not affordable. Now, we're in the process as we speak right now. In fact, later today, I'm working on an alignment with someone that is a fractional CFO with a deep specialty in the beauty industry. We don't offer fractional CFO, but we do have groups that businesses that we take through an implementation. So they implement our system. So our hope for that size business is you're able to work with a CPA firm to not only do your taxes, but do some tax planning. You're obviously going to need a bookkeeper. And then we teach the owners and the managers on how to really fill in the gap with us, helping them implement systems and being on call. So
Brilliant. Is there any other financial dues that we should be focused on as seven-figure salons?
yeah, don't forget about taxation. And taxation is a really big one. And it's actually where I had probably my deepest expertise was in the area of tax. I'm not a current tax practitioner, but we do have a lot of tax strategies. A big one here is owner payroll. How you pay yourself, how much is draws, how much is salary, where you put in the P&L. Also, I think tax, anytime you're looking like at a bonus plan for a manager or something, I think you should consider tax. So don't forget about taxes. Another one is we're a big believer in quarterly cycles and looking at your monthly financials. We have the 3 must-haves with your monthly financials. The 3 must-haves, it's got to be on time, it's got to be correct, and it has to be relevant, which means it's in a format that you can benchmark. So those are the must-haves. We also recommend a quarterly cycle. And that's part of why we're doing this benchmark project also, is to be able to, on a quarterly basis, give a company the opportunity to do a quarterly step back, zoom out.
Yep.
And because what happens in a given month is you could have a wide variation of profitability. I mean, you could have a February that's just killer, and a January that's killer, and a February that's awful, and a March that's in between. And a lot of that might have to do with just the timing of payments and inventory. But if you look at it a quarter at a time, you're able to truly break apart and say, okay, that's a really good place for me to compare against benchmarks, to really base bonus plans. So I love quarterly cycles. And I don't know, what else do I have for you? I could talk about this all
I
day.
know
Inventory is a big one.
there
So
are so many to-dos here. And I want to bring up this quote that I saw on social media that really kind of hit me, because when we think about, okay, what are the financial do's and don'ts? What are the don'ts? This quote stuck out to me. And it says, if you grow without fixing your problems, you grow your problems. So I know that the number one issue that listeners are going to have with this is that they won't take action on it. So that's maybe, in my opinion, the don't avoid the things that don't come easy for you. Or, we've seen these other quotes, like you could make 60 grand a year and be well off, or you can make 150,000 a year and be dead broke and literally living paycheck to paycheck. So are there any don'ts that we really need to kind of be honest with ourselves about?
don't neglect, don't neglect. And um, I don't neglect the finance function. And even though it might feel intimidating, it might not be fun, it might be the least desirable part of the business, is approach it with hope and approach it with confidence that many people before you as an owner who's had this level of angst, maybe they have math anxiety, money anxiety, maybe they're overwhelmed, they're, spending too much time behind the chair, is there is an opportunity to change that narrative. And you don't have to be great at math to have great financial management. But my comment is it's worth it to invest in your financial management, because once you get it set up right, the maintenance of it's not hard. And Candace does a great job with implementation groups. I mean, she'll spend 6 to 12 months and teach them how to get it set up. And it's like, okay, you're good. I also think just be careful of where you get your advice of.
Mm.
I can't be critical of those in the industry that are providing coaching and education, whatever, in the financial space. Check the credibility, though, check the background, you know, check their level of passion really about financial success. Is it just something that you have to do because to be competitive as an education or a coaching company? Or is this something where you have deep expertise, you have alignment, you have talent, you have systems, you have benchmarks, you have data, you have evidence behind your recommendations? So just be careful of who you get your advice from.
Well, I love that piece of advice, and just a perfect segue into saying I can confidently and excitingly recommend QNITY. I think that I have my top 3 platforms in the industry that an owner who wants to go from where they are to the next level need to be in alignment with. And QNITY is in that top 3. I think what you've done is incredible, and you do it in such, it's like college for salon owners and their teams. And I just love that. If you were going to leave us with any final words of encouragement or wisdom today, Tom, what would you want your parting message to be?
Oh gosh.
Mhm.
Well, you know, everybody's ignorant only on different subjects. Will Rogers said that. And I think the opposite is also true. Everybody is brilliant only in different subjects. So I think it goes to really, I think the successful businesses are the ones that pay attention. They show up. They show up for your mastermind groups. They show up for your podcasts. They show up for my podcast. That, we love working with growth-minded businesses. And I think my final words of advice is life's too short not to be a growth-minded business.
Mm, yep. Thank you, Tom. For everybody listening, I have the link in our show notes to a few things here. Here's the recap. You're going to have the link to Tom and I's first podcast that we ever did with each other that is still on financial topics. Okay, then you're going to have the link to take their P&L current active survey, where you can also upload your P&Ls to help show them where you're at, and you'll get a scorecard back. So that's a huge opportunity for you. And then I also have the link to QNITY's website and social media, so you can start really diving into all of the incredible resources and live events. It's something I think is really special that you do, is you actually hold live events where people go, and it's an intensive learning environment. So I just appreciate you so much, Tom, to take time, especially being a new grandfather, to take this time to
That's
be
the
with
big news. Yes. Thank you,
me.
Katie.
I appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for everything you're doing. I mean, the work you're doing is making a difference. And I'm one of those people that can say, I remember when, and look at the trajectory of you and your career. So it's wonderful. So thank you. And thank you for the kind words about being in the top 3. That means a lot to me and our team. So
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Well, thank you all for joining us here week after week. We appreciate your loyalty. If you love this platform, we would love it if you could take a minute to leave us a review. so that more people like yourself will discover beyond the technique, where we're here to change the way that you are supported in your business. Until next time, have an awesome day and stay strong.